Hello and welcome to our presentation. You shall not publish edit filters on English Wikipedia. Before I start, I want to give you a brief overview over what I'm going to talk about. I will start by briefly touching on our motivation, define edit filters, and then present the research questions and share some of our key findings as well as directions for future studies. Edit filters form a part of Wikipedia's quality control ecosystem, which consists of fully automated mechanisms such as bots, page protection or the spam and title blacklists, semi-automated mechanisms such as Hello and Twinkle, the machine learning framework ORUS, which other mechanisms could build upon, and editors who conduct quality control work in a more manual fashion. There is extensive research on most of these mechanisms, and considerable part of it has been presented at this very conference. However, edit filters have been so far overlooked. So what is an edit filter? An edit filter is implemented by a MediaWiki extension, which allows for defining patterns similar to a regular expression, which can be triggered not only upon a person submitting an edit, but also editors' actions such as account creation, uploading content, or the like. The filters can in turn be configured to cause different consequences, ranging from logging the edit, tagging the edit, which makes it easier to assemble lists for dashboards, warning the user that their contribution is considered non-constructive, or directly disallowing the edit before it has been published. So we tried to make sense of what is the role of edit filters among existing quality control mechanisms, why were they actually introduced, how edit filters governed, what do they do, and how has their use changed over time. So what is the role of edit filters among existing quality control mechanisms? Together with page protection and the title and spam blacklist, edit filters are the first mechanism activated to control quality. All these mechanisms operate before publishing, having the power to effectively disallow the edit to go live. However, unlike page protection, filters can target malicious users directly and does not restrict everyone. They were introduced with the hope to take care of some obvious but cumbersome to remove vandalism, and also partially out of the motivation that people were fed up with bot governance, unresponsive operators, poorly tested and not available bot source code. Although similar to bots, filters were historically faster and more reliable, being part of the so-called core software as a MediaWiki plugin, which, however, is not very relevant anymore since most bots nowadays run on infrastructure provided by Wikimedia Foundation and not on people's personal computers. So how are filters governed? On the English Wikipedia at least, there exists a special user group called Edit Filters Managers who has the additional permissions introduced by the MediaWiki extension. So these are the people who have the rights to introduce new filters and view all existing filters, since namely a lot of filters are hidden from public view, which we'll see in a second. On other language versions, this is not necessarily the case. For instance, the German, Spanish or Russian Wikipedia don't have Edit Filters Managers group. Instead, administrators in these language versions have the necessary permissions to operate edit filters. On English Wikipedia, the group is small and it is difficult to obtain a permission. The edit filter managers implement, on the one hand, filters suggested by others, or on the other hand, filters they deem necessary based on observations of current entries in the abuse log, which is the log of the MediaWiki extension related to filters, or other quality control mechanisms activity. There are some best practice guidelines which are to be considered before introducing a filter, such as extensive testing and stepwise application of severe filter actions, such as warning or disallowing the edit. And also no filters are supposed to be implemented for trivial errors or page-specific problems. Which types of tasks do filter take over? On this diagram we see all public and hidden filters respectively. And we can see that the numbers of the enabled filters are quite similar for both groups. But there are way more disabled and deleted hidden filters, which signals that public filters on the whole target general patterns, whereas hidden filters target specific cases of more or less grave vandalism and are disabled as soon as a particular wave of this ebbs away. Here we can see the filter actions configured for public, yellow, and hidden, purple, enabled filters respectively. It stands to attention that public filters have more frequently warn and tag as configured actions, whereas the most frequent action for hidden filters is disallow, which again is conform with the community's guideline to implement hidden filters for specific malicious cases, whereas general cases are to be addressed by public filters. We have also analyzed the patterns, titles, actions, as well as user comments on filters for all filters present on English Wikipedia as of January 2019, and assigned a label to each filter trying to determine the filter's purpose. We came up with the following 4 classes of labels. The majority of filters target vandalism, some part of filters target non-constructive but probably not malicious edits, which we dubbed good faith, such as new editors adding content not formatted according to wiki syntax. And on a smaller scale, there were some filters taking care of maintenance tasks, such as tests, and the purpose of some filters remained unclear. How has filters use evolved over time? Filters were quite active from their very introduction, despite the fact that the community initially anticipated that there were going to be fewer times than once every few hours. We have studied filters' activity from their introduction to January 2018 and observed following general patterns. At the beginning, hits caused by good faith filters were higher than vandalism hits. Then this trend swapped. There was some periodicity to filter hits, with less hits in the summer months of the Northern Hemisphere. There was a sudden surge in filter hits at the end of 2015, beginning of 2016, with subsequently higher baseline, which we could provide no conclusive explanation for. At least partially, the surge at this time was due to a big number of attempted account creations. However, what exactly caused them remains unclear. And we have also looked at the edits intercepted this period on a sample basis and couldn't find any meaningful pattern. They seem to target random pages with mostly garbage content. One of the pages where a filter triggered most frequently in January 2016 was skateboard, with around 500 filter hits, which is quite small compared to the overall 300,000 hits that we were trying to account for. So this remains kind of a mystery, which can be further pursued. So what? Well, the main purpose of this research was to steer the attention of the scientific community to this quite powerful mechanism, which has somehow remained unnoticed till now. We laid the ground with some general observations and data work, and we would very much like to see work in several directions from here. So one interesting topic will be the comparison of edit filter usage across different language versions, since we all know there are differences in the governance of different language versions, and we have already seen that, for instance, the edit filter managers group exists on some language versions but doesn't on others. It is also an interesting observation made by one of our reviewers that it is quite possible that smaller language versions have different quality control ecosystems which rely less heavily on sophisticated machine learning techniques and maybe more heavily on filters. And also, we think ethnographic analysis is due. On the one hand, in order to determine what the repercussions of edit filters are on editors in general, but also more specifically on new editors, and whether filters are a mechanism which can successfully help retain new editors by providing them with feedback and allowing them to improve a contribution instead of reverting it without seeking dialogue first. Yeah, so these are just several of the directions we could think of, and probably you can think of a bunch of more, and it was like really interesting detective work, and we will be very excited to see some more work in this direction. Here's the project's repository, where all the data we have assembled so far, together with our data analysis pipeline, can be found. Thus, you can verify our results and build upon them in order to answer some further questions.